So you want delicious, fluffy, and crispy focaccia that requires no kneading or special equipment. One might say that's impossible, but I'm gonna show you otherwise, because the most important technique in making good focaccia isn't kneading your dough. It's time. By the end of this video, you'll learn how to make delicious focaccia, as well as how to make roasted garlic Parmesan butter that pairs beautifully with it. So follow along and let's get to cooking. Okay, so let's make our quick and dirty focaccia bread, which is actually not quick, but it's very dirty. One thing I wanna mention now about this recipe is that you really need to use a digital scale. I think this thing is one of the most slept on kitchen tools that for some reason no one uses. Digital scales let you follow recipes to the exact gram, and they also make cleaning easier, because if you're using measuring cups instead, you have to clean each and every single one of those things. So do yourself a favor, get a digital scale, and they're honestly pretty cheap to find on Amazon. But let's get on to the recipe. We're gonna first need a large bowl, and in that bowl, we're gonna throw in 730 grams of bread flour, followed by 15 grams of sugar, 15 grams of salt, and 7 grams or 1 packet of instant yeast. And just so you're aware, because I always make this mistake, instant yeast and active yeast are different. You want to use instant yeast because you don't have to bloom it in water, whereas active yeast, you have to bloom it ahead of time. Now with the whisk, I'm gonna whisk all of our dry ingredients together, and then I'm gonna pour in 20 grams of olive oil, followed by 620 grams of water. You're gonna next grab your favorite wooden spoon and then just start mixing it. You wanna mix it enough until all the flour is hydrated and you have no dry floury bits in the bowl. This is the only bit of elbow work you need to do, and it honestly takes like 30 seconds. You just want to mix until all of it's hydrated. We're next going to cover the bowl with a towel and then set it aside for 30 minutes. Now, while we wait for 30 minutes for our dough, let's now get to work on our roasted garlic Parmesan compound butter. We're going to head on over to our oven and set it to 250 degrees convection bake, and then we're going to grab 1 stick of butter and then leave it on our counter so that way it gets to room temperature. I'm then going to grab a little ramekin that's oven safe, and I'm going to pour in about a head's worth of garlic in there. I like to use peeled garlic to make it easier myself. From here, I'm going to put in enough oil to just barely cover the garlic, and then that goes straight into our oven for about an hour to an hour and a half until softened. Now, while that's in the oven, let's get to chopping and grating. We're gonna need 10 grams of Italian parsley and give it a good chopping until it's nice and fine like this. From there, we're gonna grab some Parmesan cheese, and please use the fresh stuff. It's so much better. But with the microplane, we're gonna grate it until we get about 50 grams of Parmesan cheese. Now we're gonna set both of these ingredients to the side and wait until the garlic is finished in the oven. So our dough is rested for about 30 minutes now, and we're gonna perform our first stretch and fold. If you look at it now, you can see it's very hydrated, but it's lacking any proper structure, and it kind of looks like oatmeal. Looks like oatmeal. So to fix that, we're gonna strengthen the structure of it by giving it a stretch and fold. You're first gonna soak your hand in water, making sure it's fully wet, and then you're gonna grab one side of our dough, stretching it upwards, and then folding it down, and continuing that process around the whole dough. Don't overthink it. You really just wanna stretch it up and then throw it over itself. You wanna make sure you're stretching all of the dough, and you'll notice really quickly that after a couple stretches, the dough's gonna start resisting against you, and it won't stretch nearly as much anymore. Once you get to that point, you're done with your first stretch and fold. Throw another towel over it and let it rest for an additional 30 minutes. We're gonna perform our stretch and fold technique 2 more times. You can see here after the second 30 minutes, when we perform our second stretch and fold, it's starting to form more and more like a ball of dough. Once I finish my final stretch and fold and the dough's starting to resist, I'm gonna throw a towel back on it and let it rest for another 30 minutes. After our last 30 minutes have passed, we're gonna do our final stretch and fold. And as you can see, our dough is starting to rise a lot. There's a ton of air in it, and it's a lot more pliable than before. You can see here the first stretch and fold, I'm able to get it really high, showing how much stronger the gluten has developed. I'm gonna give it one stretch and fold all the way around, and then I'm gonna put plastic wrap over it and throw it into our fridge and let it ferment for 1 to 2 days. You can throw this on a sheet pan and then just bake it after letting it rest and rise for another hour, but letting it ferment in the fridge for 1 to 2 days really makes it so much better. It develops and enhances the flavors in a way that makes it insane, and I promise it's worth every second of patience. Now, I made a dough ahead of time so we could bake it right now, but before we do that, let's finish making our roasted garlic Parmesan butter. I pulled this sucker out of the oven at about the hour and 15-minute mark, and as you can see, the garlic is fully softened. I'm gonna strain the garlic out of the oil, placing it in a bowl, but keep the oil because that's essentially infused garlic oil. It's super delicious and pungent, goes well with anything. Also, be more careful than me when you're straining your garlic. Ay, coño! I don't know how I didn't get hit with molten hot oil there, but thank God I did not. Now, once all of your garlic is in the bowl, with your spoon, you're gonna smash it all until you get a nice garlic paste like this. We cook this low and slow enough so that all the garlic should break down with very little effort. Now, in our bowl of smashed garlic, we're gonna throw 1 stick of butter that we had left on the counter softening, 50 grams of our grated Parmesan, and 10 grams of our minced Italian parsley. Give it a thorough mixing, and don't forget to add 4 grams of salt, as well as about 10 to 15 cranks of black pepper. I'll give it one last mixing, and now you have one of the best butters for focaccia, or just any bread, period. You can melt it on top of our focaccia before baking, but I personally like to have it on the side so that way you could rip pieces of focaccia and dip it or spread the butter on it. Oh, and here's a little peek of me trying it to see my reaction in case you're curious. Oh my God. It's so good. So now let's get to baking our focaccia. It's been 2 days since our dough's been resting in the fridge, and if you look at it now, you can see it's risen a lot and there's tons of air pockets and bubbles in there. If you put your head in there and give it a whiff, it smells super fermenty and kind of boozy in the best way. From here, we're gonna grab a sheet pan, preferably the one already on top of our container, and now we're gonna place some parchment paper on it. Now, if you want, you could fold the edges, cut the creases, and place the parchment paper nice and neatly on the sheet pan, but I personally prefer this method of crumbling up the parchment paper into a little ball and then opening it up, and it should be able to lay down the sheet pan nice and easily. Now, once your pan has parchment paper, do not pour your dough over it yet like I'm doing here. Instead, we're gonna put a generous amount of olive oil on the parchment paper, making sure to spread it everywhere so that way the dough doesn't stick to it. Once your parchment paper is nice and oiled up, we're gonna now pour our dough on top of it, giving it a nice stretch around the sides. Now, when you first start pulling the dough, it's gonna be soft and pliable, but then it's gonna start resisting you a little bit. Just don't worry, pull it as much as you can and then leave it alone. We're gonna now place another sheet tray on top of it that's been sprayed with olive oil and then leave it at room temperature for 3 hours. This will help let the dough rise one final time, and you don't wanna bake the dough while it's still cold. We just pulled it out of the refrigerator, so you want it to get to room temperature first. At the 1 hour mark, we're gonna check on our dough and stretch it so it fully covers the pan. Be really careful here. You don't wanna squeeze the dough and pull any of the air out. As you can see, with just that initial hour of fermentation, we've gained a lot of rise and air and started to develop in our dough. Once it's covering the whole pan, throw the lid back on it and then let it rest for the additional 2 more hours until it gets to room temp and has fully risen. So now it's time to bake our bread. About 30 minutes before the 3 hour rise for it, we're gonna head on over to our oven and set it to 450 degrees convection bake. Once the 3 hours have passed, I'm gonna grab our bread, removing the top baking sheet, and as you can see, it's risen a lot. And there is a bunch of air and bubbliness to it. Now it's time to do the most satisfying part, which is wet your fingers and give it a good dimpling. When dimpling though, make sure you're evenly dimpling the bread and you're not overdoing it so that there's no more air pockets in there. You want the air pockets in. But once your bread is nice and dimpled, it's time to hit it with a ton of olive oil on top, as well as some freshly grated Parmesan cheese, and then throw it in the oven. Bake time for this this is pretty quick. I'm gonna say 15 to 20 minutes, but you can bake it a little longer if you want it to be really, really crunchy on the outside. Okay, so it took me about 25 minutes to get to my desired crispiness, and when I pull out of the oven, look at how beautiful this sucker is. That is an insanely stunning focaccia that has risen beautifully and has a nice little exterior crunch to it. It is a thick boy. If you want to make a sandwich out of that, you got plenty of real estate to make a sandwich with it. All right, I can't not try this already. It smells so good. I'm gonna try a piece just by itself, no butter. This is the best tasting focaccia I've ever had. I love making this for parties or my family. I'll just make it 2 days in advance, bake it day of, and serve it. And it's always a crowd pleaser. People are always shocked at how good it is. Now let's try with a little bit of this butter. Oh my God. Oh my God. Okay. Look, I'm not gonna lie here. This is probably one of the best tasting things I've ever had in my life. I'm being genuine and serious. This tastes so good. I could eat this whole thing right now and be as happy as a bug. I don't know why I said bug, but I could just be happy. All I'm gonna say is that this takes little to no work. You need no special equipment. You don't even need to sweat. You're not even kneading the dough. All you need to do is let time do the rest. Develop the flavors, raise the bread, enhance everything, and it is so worth it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit the like and subscribe button. If you want to see more videos, here's one I'm recommending to you guys right now. Thank you so much for watching and have a wonderful rest of your day.